Hello and welcome to our section 2.3 lecture for Algebra 1 Part 1. Today we're going to be talking about the great distributive property. Okay. In words, I would say that the distributive property involves having, let's just say when we have a number multiplied by, I'm going to say items in parentheses, we multiply the number by everything in the parentheses. Okay. And symbol-wise, it makes a little bit more sense. If I have something multiplied by, say, b plus c in parentheses, and I can't simplify the parentheses first, that's the important part here, is that if these were just numbers, I would add them together and then multiply that by the number outside the parentheses. And this is how the new wave of math is trying just to do multiplication. A lot of times they're trying to break up one of the numbers into two things that's a little bit easier to multiply. And so what we want to do is we want to multiply this a by everything in the parentheses, or we want to distribute. Another word for distribute is, or another idea, I guess, is like hand out. I want to hand out that a to everything in the parentheses. And I'm using the operation between the number and the parentheses to do that. Okay, I'm using multiplication in this case. And it turns into a times b plus a times c. And what I mean by this is what they're trying to get us to do at more basic levels of multiplication is if I have a problem that says like 4 times 26, and this is actually what we do when we stack them and multiply them, is it looks a little bit different. We're trying to take that 4 times 20 plus 6. Because 26 is 20 plus 6, so we take that 4, multiply it by the 20, and 4 multiply it by the 6. Well, 4 times 20 is 80, 4 times 6 is 24, and we would get 104. Well, if we stacked it and multiplied it, we would actually do the same thing. We just kind of do it backwards, right? We go 4 times 6, which is 24. In fact, this 24, and 4 times 2 is 8, but it's technically 80 because it's in the 10 spot, and then plus 2 from the 24. But we get that 80, we get this 80 from the 4 times 2, and then we have to add the 2, and that's why we get 104 there. Okay, so it's just a different way to look at it. But in the expressions world, in the algebra expressions world, we're not just going to have numbers here. We're going to have a variable or two somewhere. Okay? So we want to use the distributive property to get rid of the parentheses. And for a couple of these, I'm going to write them out and really what they mean, but then we're just going to go to assuming that part. So I'm taking the 5 and I'm multiplying it by the x and multiplying it by the 4. So I'm going to have 5 times x plus 5 times 4. But 5 times x we just write as 5x, and 5 times 4 we just write that as 20. And we're good to go. That is considered to be more simplified than this step. This step is complex. This step is simple. Okay? So if something says to simplify, and there's parentheses involved, we want to get rid of those parentheses. because it is less work in the long run. Now, this is just to get us to see that it doesn't matter where the number is being multiplied by the parentheses, it still needs to be passed out to everything inside the parentheses. And I still do think about things in the parentheses in that kind of term breakdown, right? I think of those as individual pieces. Now that just muddies it up a little bit because they're not spaced out very well. But I do want to think of it as 12 times 4x and 12. This is kind of the weird part, but I'm going to say plus 12 times a negative 8. That's how I want to think about it, but I usually don't write that. 12 times 4 is 48. So that's a 48x. And 12 times negative 8 is going to be minus, 96. Okay, and use a calculator on that if you have to. Or stack it and multiply it, or use distributive property again. I probably wouldn't do that. Next one, we can distribute a negative, right? It's going to mean the same thing. I'm not going to write that intermediate step. I'm just going to go straight to the answer because that's what I want us to eventually be able to do. Negative 8 times 3 is negative 24, and that has an x on it. Negative 8 times 7 is negative 56. And there we go. Last one that we have, negative 2. This one has an x with it. I might write this one just to make sure that we know what we're doing. But I'm taking that negative 2x, multiplying it by x, and multiplying it by negative 11. So here I have negative 2x times x. And then I have negative 2x times negative 11. And this is something that we want to make sure we pay attention to. First of all, negative 2 is the only number in this first term. And then x times x is actually what's going to give me an x squared. So that part's kind of important. The other thing on the second part is that I have a negative times a negative. It's a negative 2x times negative 11. So negative 2 times negative 11 is positive 22, and it still has an x on it. So this is a way that we can elevate the exponents on our expressions, is when we multiply x's by multiple things. Okay? Now go ahead and pause the video and give the next three a try. They're very similar to the ones that I just did. Hopefully you had a chance to do that. Hopefully you had a chance to do that. Multiplying 7 by the 2x and 7 by the negative 7. 7 times 2x is 14x. 7 times negative 7 is negative 49. Next one, 7 times negative 3x and 7 times, not 7. How about 11 times negative 3x and 11 times negative 8? 11 times negative 3 is negative 33, and there's an x on that one. 11 times negative 8 is negative 88, and we're good to go. Guess I could have boxed that one too. Okay, this one's just backwards, but we still do the same thing. I still want to take that that negative 3 to that 5x and that negative 8. Negative 3 times 5x is negative 15x. Negative 3 times 8 is negative 24. And I can replace negatives with minus signs. This one, I've got a bunch of negatives going on, and I've got some x's involved. Negative 4x times negative 8x, multiply the numbers by the numbers. Negative 4 times negative 8 is 32. X times x is what gives me x squared. Negative 4 times negative 12 is going to be positive 48. And that one has an x with it. So there we go. Let's go ahead and turn the page. Sometimes I'll have a simplifying expressions problem with multiple variables involved. Let me just get something done here real quick so we can see a little bit. I'm going to move me, I guess, over here. This isn't as important. Okay, so for this one, I have multiple instances of my parentheses, and all that really means is that I have to distribute multiple times. So as I go through these, 3 times x is 3x, 3 times -7 is -21. Also, I have 7 times x and 7 times 8. 7 times x is 7x, 7 times 8 is 56. Now I have to simplify by combining like terms that we talked about yesterday. I have an x term and an x term, a number term, and a number term. Okay. 3x and 7x is 10x's. -21 and +56 is 35. Okay. This next one, I have 7x that I'm distributing. And then this is kind of weird. I have a negative that I have to distribute. And then I have an 8x that I have to distribute. So we'll do one of those first and then deal with it. There's another way to go at it that I'll talk about later after we're done with it. This one's kind of ugly. Let's do this first part first, the first set of distributive property. 7x times 2x. 7 times 2 is 14. X times x is x squared. 7x times 4. 7 times 4 is 28. And there's 1x. Now I'm going to switch this to an addition, and I'm going to think about this as this minus sign as plus a -1. And I'm going to distribute that -1 into those parentheses first. But I'm going to leave parentheses there because I have that 8x on the outside. I don't know why my pen switched, but it did. So this will be a -1 times 4x will be -4x. -1 times 6 will be plus, wow, I don't know why I was thinking that. Come on. How about a +6? And then I have that 8x on the outside. Jeez, a little click happy. Sorry. So now I'll go ahead and distribute that 8x in. I have to rewrite the first part. And here I'm going to have 8 times 4 is -32. And x times x is x squared. 8 times 6 is 48. And that has an x on it. Maybe I'll put that one in parentheses because it is negative. Now, one thing I could have done here instead is I could have moved that 8x over because multiplication commutes. Remember, it's another one of those that we can write either way. So I could have just moved that 8x in front and I could have treated that like a -8x that I needed to distribute. So if you need to do that at times, feel free to do that. I don't think it'll come up too much because that's just a really ugly problem. But at the end of the day, we can do it. I'll use my square brackets for my x squareds, and I'll use my squigglies for my x's. Okay, x squared wise, I have 14 and -32. I don't want to get it wrong, so we'll just do that. 14 minus 32, -18. And those are my x squareds. For x's, I have 28 and 48. That's going to be 60, and then 16 is 76 x's. And there we go. Again, that was pretty complicated. I don't think I would ask that of you very often. This one, I've got an 8 that needs to distribute and a -2 that needs to distribute. Sorry, a -2x. And then I've got a -5 on the outside, but we'll worry about that later. So I've got 8 times x is 8x. 8 times 9 is 72. -2x times -7. Multiply the numbers. -2 times -7 is +14. And there's an x there. -2x times +2x. Multiply the numbers. Don't think what I don't want you to think right now. I don't want you to think that they cancel. So just multiply the numbers. -2 times 2 is -4. X times x is x squared. And then I have that -5 out there. Now that I have all my parentheses gone, now I can combine like terms. I cannot combine like terms if I have parentheses around. So I'll use my squiggle for my x's. I've got one x squared term there, and I've got two number terms. Or we also call those constant terms because they don't have a variable, so they're always going to stay the same. I'll deal with my x squareds first. That's just going to be written as a -4x squared. I have an 8x and a 14x. That's going to be 22x's. And I have a 72 minus 5. So that's plus 67. And there we go. A little tricky on that one. This first one that we have here does not actually have multiple rounds of distributive property, but it does have something tricky. It has this negative sign in front of the parentheses. I technically have to distribute that negative in order to get rid of those parentheses. So that's going to be a -3x, and -1 technically times -8 is going to be +8. All I have that are in common are constant terms. So this will be -3x. -5 plus 8 is going to be +3. Kind of similar on this one. We have just an 8 hanging out in front, but I do have to distribute that 7 and distribute that -4. So 8 plus 7 times 2 is 14. That has an x. 7 times -8 is -56. -4 times x is -4x. -4 times +2 is -8. Okay. Number-wise, I have 8, -56, and -8. X-wise, I have 14 and -4. So it turns out that numbers-wise, my 8s cancel because that's an 8, that's a -8, and I only have -56. X-wise, I have 14 and -4, that's going to give me a +10. And then -56. Last one for this set, we're going to distribute. Kind of back distribute on that one and forward distribute on that one. And the arrows don't really mean anything. I could put them on all of them. I just don't always. 6x times 3 is 6 times 3 is 18x. 6 times -1 is -6. X times x is x squared. Here I've got 5x times 11x. 5 times 11 is +55. And x times x is x squared. 5x times -15. 5 times -15 is 50 and 25, 75. So -75. And that has an x on it. X terms, I have these two. Include that sign. And x squared terms, I have these two. So dealing with x squareds first, I have a negative 6 and a positive 55. You could subtract. You could go 55 minus 6. That's going to give you 49. And then 18 minus 75. Let's just be sure on that one. I'm going to go, no, I'll do it. 18 minus 75, negative 57. X's. Some of those got a little bit complicated. I want you to make sure that you feel pretty confident with just distributive property, but do make sure that you can distribute an X because that is important. Now, what if we have multiple things inside the parentheses? Well, it doesn't mean anything different. I just have to multiply the number that's outside by everything that's inside. Okay, so this one I just have to multiply it 3 times. 10 times 2, 20. That has an X. 10 times 8, 80. That has a Y. 10 times negative 7, negative 70. Next one, 4 times 2x squared, 4 times 5x, and 4 times 8. 4 times 2 is 8. That has an x squared. 4 times 5 is 20. That has an x. And 4 times 8 is 32. And I should say, I didn't say it on the last one or this one yet, I don't have to combine like terms because I don't have any like terms to combine. But make sure that you don't before you just say, yep, I'm done. But I don't on these ones. Because on these ones, if I would have had like terms, I could have simplified them inside of the parentheses before distributing, which would be a good thing to make sure you look for. This one's just coming backwards, right? But I have negative 4 times these 3 things. Negative 4 times negative 3 is positive 12, and that has an x to the 4th. Negative 4 times 18 is 40 and 32, 72. Negative 72 x squared. And 4 times negative 2 is positive 8. Seemed complicated, but wasn't that bad. Go ahead and pause the video and try the last 3. Okay, hopefully you had a chance to do that. It's just triple distribution. It's not that bad. 11 times x squared is 11x squared. 11 times 5 is 55. That has an x. And 11 times 7 is, or 11 times negative 7 is negative 77. The thing I really like about this is there's not a whole lot of work to show. Sure, you could show the intermediate step, but that's a little bit overkill even for where we're at right now. Negative 5 times 2 is negative 10. That has an x. Negative 5 times 5 is negative 25. That has a y. And negative 5 times negative 4 is plus 20, and that has a z. And last one for today. Couldn't come soon enough. Just working our way backwards. And we have 3 times 17. 3 times 17, that's 30 and 21, so 51. Oops, that doesn't have any variables. So 51. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. That has an x that I kind of wrote over. And then 3 times 4 is 12. How about we write 12 the right way instead of 21 backwards? I'm not getting tired at all. 12y. There we go. All right. Make sure you write any questions you have on the left side. Ask them when we get to class. Otherwise, have a great day, and we will see you then.